right. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon or morning, depending on what part of the country you're dialing in from. But my name is Rocky Valadez. I'm going to serve as the facilitator and moderator for our webinar today. I am based in Indianapolis, Indiana, and I have the extreme privilege of being Senior Vice President of Engagement at Project Lead the Way. Today, we have invited three amazing experts who are going to share how their schools and they as educators are preparing students for future careers in biomedical sciences, biomedical careers. But we are really advancing that work, and I think you're going to be really thrilled with what you see today. So first, we're going to ask for our presenters to introduce themselves, and I think actually we are going to have Michelle kick us off.
Sure. I'm Michelle Lawrence. I am, as you saw on the first slide, from North Kansas City School District, currently teaching medicine and healthcare at North Kansas City Hospital. So I'm going to warn you, I have no students in the room, but there are some alerts that come over every once in a while, code reds, code blue, code whatever. And so I might have to mute at some point, and I've talked to the other two leaders and they'll kind of take over at that point. This is my 26th year of teaching. I think the two things that I have brought into the classroom to give the kids some real world learning experience that have made the biggest impact is internships, which really give them an overview of what the career is and allows them to experience what's going on in the field and make some decisions whether they like it or not. And the other one is industry recognized credentials, because those give the kids a direct pathway to a career right after high school.
Fantastic. Thanks, Michelle. Julie, introduce yourself and share a little about what you're doing over there in Elkhorn Crossing.
Sure. I'm Julie Adams. I'm in Georgetown, Kentucky at Elkhorn Crossing School, which is a career and technical school. I came into teaching with an occupational license. I was a research scientist. And so I am a proud CTE teacher. I enjoyed teaching during grad school. One of the things that I noticed in my postdoc years working with graduate students is that these people are super smart, but they can't apply knowledge from one section into another field. And so that's why I got into teaching. I was recruited to start a biomedical sciences program here in Georgetown. And my goal was to help students integrate and intersect their STEM curriculum with all of the subjects. And so I've been doing that for the last 17 years and helping students hopefully apply their knowledge in authentic ways.
Fantastic. Thanks, Julie. And last but certainly not least, Joe. How's it going out there in Washington?
Oh, it's going well. So, my name is Joe McCullum. I'm in Spokane, Washington, and I teach at Ridgeline High School out here. And kind of building off what Julie said, one of the things that when I started the biomed program, I really wanted the students to apply the knowledge to real world scenarios. And so, one of the focuses that I do is getting them out doing job shadows and field trips where they can actually see that curriculum in motion and see how it all comes together rather than just memorizing it, taking the test and forgetting about it. Just kind of really putting it in real world situations and making them kind of make those connections for their future and their, yeah, future curriculum.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again to each of you for taking some time out of your busy schedules to share, to help us get better as professionals dedicated to this work out there across the nation. So we're going to transition to some examples from the field. And so we'd love to hear our presenters share a little bit about the shifts that they're making in their schools to broaden biomedical career pathways for their students and for their communities, and any frameworks or any supports that are being put in place to help facilitate those changes. So I think first we're going to hear from Dr. Julie Adams.
Yeah, I'm excited to tell you guys a bit about my school because I think that's one of the paradigm shifts that really make what we do here at Elkhorn Crossing possible. We have what's known as or we call it a village setup. Some people might call it an academy style, and students come for half a day from their high schools. And so when they come into the biomedical sciences village, they have biomedical science. They rotate to a math class and then to a science class, and those three teachers, myself included, we work really closely together to integrate and intersect so that students are learning something in math or they're learning something in science, and then they're seeing where that's applied in the real world when they come into the biomedical sciences class. And we do ninth through 12th grade kind of building and scaffolding through those 4 years, so that they are walking into college and walking into even jobs, outside of high school with that kind of in mind. Our course sequence, we made sure that it included a dual credit, uh, not only in academic areas, but also in the career tech area. And we stress the importance of, career learning, and those real world experiences is what makes us stand out from just, a hard science class or a cool science class. And one of the things that I think has made us successful and makes our school successful is, and you can do this anywhere, it just doesn't have to be in a career tech school, but building a true program. Because what you have is a nexus of teachers that are working together, and you're seeing the same students for 4 years in a row. And so you get to know those students, you get to build traditions. I have some pictures there of our white coat ceremony and stethoscope ceremony. We do a lot of outreach where there's a picture there of us with some fourth graders. We can really institute our profile of a learner for our Scott County School District, that they can really, implement those characteristics. And I've got a picture there of us doing a cool little Christmas activity where they pass these socks around, and she tells a story. But it's just fun to build those traditions and for students to want to come back, and it allows us to have a fairly robust alumni as well.
Awesome.
Pass it to
Thank you
Joe.
so much for sharing, Joe. Let's hear some of your examples from the field.
Yeah. So, first of all, I'm at a more of a traditional high school than a tech center or an academy. So, one of the key things that I did building the program was making sure that the counselors are really aware of what the class is and how we want to build that. Making sure that we can expand it with other teachers, kind of like Julie was talking about building a program. So, not just offering a class here and there, but knowing that the students are going to be there from years 1 through 4 and really wanting to finish. They get cords for graduation. We do a white coat ceremony, so we really acknowledge the hard work that they put in. We also go down. I send some of my fourth year students down to the middle school to help recruit, kind of act as a mentor, and then also kind of get the kids thinking about that before registration comes around. And just they feel like they're part of the program, but on day one when they show up, and it makes their experience at high school better. And they're ready to go. So it creates that pathway as they go, and it seems to really help them get the flow. The other thing we do is doing a lot of not internships, looking at job shadows. So sending them out to kind of non-typical places. So I mean, obviously, I want to have them go into hospitals if we can, which can be kind of tough. But the the ambulance service has been a fantastic partner. They love the students do ride-alongs. They come in and give presentations and show them what it's about. Even the helicopters for the air ambulances, they love having the students come in and see the process. So I get those kids not only applying what they're learning, but they're thinking about other things besides just a doctor, a nurse, a pharmacist. So they're realizing healthcare as this huge, broad area. And then just creating partnerships with local universities and hospitals. That bottom picture on the bottom there is the Da Vinci surgical robot. So I've created over time that they know that biomed students are very focused. They're highly responsible, mature students that are really motivated, and so they actually let those students scrub in and go in and use the robot. Obviously, not on a person, but they get to go through the demo mode and things like that. So it's not often that a 16-year-old gets to go scrub in and get on a $4 million robot. But they know that these students, this is what's going to spark that interest or keep that interest alive as they go forward to the universities. So really making those partnerships with the hospitals and universities and just letting them know, hey, this is what these high school students are actually doing in the class, and showing them what level they can work just really helps them transition to that next level. So
Excellent. Thanks for sharing those. And I think, Joe, you bring a great point about exposing students to careers that go beyond simply a doctor or a nurse. And I think that's an exciting thing we may dig into a little bit further along in the webinar. Michelle, you want to share some of the examples that you could bring to us?
Absolutely. So, I just now realized why we're all three on here. Julie's at the CTE Center, Joe's at a traditional high school, and I'm place-based actually in a hospital. I'm like, you guys are getting all the realm of places that kids can learn from. So, this is actually my first year being in a hospital-based program, which has allowed me to add the internship piece in. It's really, really hard to do that when you're in a traditional classroom, which is where I had been the last 25 years. However, even when I was, sorry, even when I was in a traditional classroom, I think what my kids got the most value out of was getting those certifications and those industry recognized credentials. We do get a little kickback, obviously, from the state because it's a checkbox. But I think more than that, the kids are all getting jobs in what they are getting certified in, even if it's just a stepping stone to that next position. So, just a sample of some of them that I have on this screen. A lot of them that I do are through National Healthcare Association, which runs somewhere between $100 to $150 a student. Our program that I'm at right now pays for them. Our CTE department at the public high school I was at paid for them, so it never has come back on the students. So obviously funding would be something you would want to look at. But through National Healthcare Association, my kids get their medical assistant license. And then this year we added the EKG tech and phlebotomy tech as well. They all get BLS certified. If you have a local fire department that has an ambulance service, a lot of those will do BLS certification completely for free or for the cost of the card, which if they do a digital card, it's like $5. Super simple. CVS Health has a farm tech licensure program. It is not a certification. So all the kids have to do ahead of time is get fingerprinted and background check if they're over 18. And then they also have to go through a drug screen. And then in the state of Missouri, they have to actually get their license from the Missouri Farm Board, which is just an online application, pay $40, put in your social security number, and they mail it to you. And then CVS's, which are across the country, will allow you to send your interns there and you agree to a certain number of hours. We do 20 hours of community service. And so my kids do it for 20 hours. Every one of them has gotten a job offer from that. NASM, which is down in the bottom right-hand corner, National Association of Sports Medicine, has a certified personal trainer that the kids can get. It is a little bit more expensive. It's around $350. And then in the lower left-hand corner of the screen is the BCSI stackable credentials. These are something that was actually, I know a lot of industry recognized credentials, sometimes the industry doesn't actually recognize it, but these are credentials that were made by the biotech industry. So it's Bioscience Core Skills Institute. There's several stackable credentials in order to be BCSI certified and get hired as a like bottom level lab scientist, right? You're working on just micropipetting and things like that, but you have to get 5 of those. And so we do those in with our class here in Kansas City. And I saw that there were some people from Kansas City. The Kauffman Foundation covers the cost of those for our students. So it's no cost whatsoever to the school district or to the student. One of the things that I found though, with some of the certifications, particularly those with NHA, so the medical assistant, the phlebotomy tech, and the EKG tech, unless they have the clinical hours to back it up, they aren't as likely to get hired. And so my position this year being actually in the hospital has been phenomenal because the clinics here have partnered with me. So I've got 4 kids in North Kansas City Hospital's biomedical lab right now, and they are getting their phlebotomy tech. I think I checked in with them yesterday. They have to get 100 sticks, 100 successful sticks in order to actually be certified. One of them was at 50 and one of them was at 48. And so I went and watched them do a couple on actual patients. They don't tell the patients, so you might have gotten stuck by one of my students. Same thing with the EKG tech. They're following around in cardiology and they're learning how to do EKGs and stress tests. And so they're getting that hands-on experience. And the MAs as well. They're working on several different floors. I've got students on all floors working as an MA and working on their license at the same time. So partnering those credentials and the internship together has really been powerful for me this year.
Fantastic. I think those are all great examples of shifts that we're making perhaps from a traditional side of things, even with, Joe being in a traditional, 4-year comprehensive high school, there are shifts there that are helping our students explore what life after high school might look like, and how to connect those careers to real tangible opportunities while they're in their traditional setting. So that's really, really exciting. Thank you so much for sharing those examples. We want to transition now and start to think about some strategies for making those shifts. Like when we think about something to try out and practical takeaways and next steps, we're going to dig into a few of those. So, Joe, would you mind kicking us off and sharing some of what you could help us think about with tangible next steps?
Yeah, for sure. So one of the big things that I had to do when I shifted over to the biomed classes versus a traditional biology class was to get the students kind of thinking a little different than just because as we know, these biomed classes aren't necessarily just a stand and deliver. And so I like to do what I call open-ended questions. So like this seems really random at first for people, but I've got a picture of a whale and an elephant, and the big question that I use this one for is, why do elephants and whales have much, much lower rates of cancer than humans? And then I'll let the students just sit there and think about it. They'll throw some answers out. And this is one over many years I've had to kind of learn how to get a poker face and just let them throw out as many different answers as they can. And eventually they're going to get to, we're talking about tumor suppressor genes, which we're talking about. But the idea here is not to just, throw the question out. And then when the first kid gets it right, or the first student answers it correctly, just say, yep, you're right. Because then all the other students in class haven't really learned anything. I haven't heard their opinions. I haven't heard, where their background is. So just giving them a chance to kind of actually think and chew on the material. That is one strategy that has worked out really well. It helps the biomedical students apply the knowledge to, not just memorize it like I talked about it, but actually start to apply it and then just kind of build on those foundational concepts as we go forward. The other strategy that I really highly recommend is just providing them opportunities for field trips. They can obviously be a little tough to set up, but getting the students out of the classroom makes a huge difference. Our students are kind of like my own kids. After a while, if I say it, it goes in one ear and out the other. But if I take them out in the field and they're at a hospital and the person working in the hospital says the exact same thing that I said, all of a sudden the light bulb goes off and they're the most amazing person. And whatever, you got to take the wins when you can. And so, but doing basic tours, like, so we go to the hospitals, we go to the universities that we partner with to tour their facilities just to show students what the next level is going to kind of look like. Cause sometimes they really don't even know what that looks like at a university. Like going to the air ambulance site and showing them what those flight nurses actually do and all of the medicine behind the scenes. So those have just been fantastic where they're taking that information and then going and seeing it in the real world. And that actually works out really well for me too as a teacher because, the longer I do this, the more background I have, but I'm not necessarily up to date all the time on the newest changes coming through. So when I go out into the field with the students, I can see all the new stuff that they're doing and new protocols and things that they were looking for with our students. So it helps keep us fresh on what we're kind of presenting to the students. And then one of the other strategies that I like to do is, obviously I didn't come up with this, but the single point rubrics, which we've all switched to. Single point rubrics are a great way. There's a lot of modeling and, building of things in class. And it's a great way for me to say, this is kind of what I'm looking for, but it gives the students a ton of opportunity to really expand, to show me what they know about the concept and kind of add to it in ways that I might not have thought about. Traditional rubrics, it just kind of puts them in a box and they're just checking boxes to try to get that best score, where that single point rubric allows them to kind of go a little different direction and still get those points while, me not telling them exactly what they need to do. So it's allowing them to be creative and open for new pathways to show how that model relates to other concepts in our class. And then the last one is just, in the biomedical science classes, if you're in that class, there's a lot of time where the students are working, which is great. It's not just me up there talking. And so in that time, that's a fantastic time for me to go around, have those in those conversations, not only get to know the students, kind of going on what's going on with their world, but also it's such an easy way to check in on their level of understanding. So just making those one-on-one connections rather than waiting until I'm actually officially grading something I can quickly go around in small group settings, get an idea of their level of understanding, and that's going to guide me on our pacing and what we're going to have to cover next as we go forward with the curriculum. So.
Great strategies for sure. I can tell you as the parent of a senior in high school right now, the most exciting thing he did this week in class was go on a field trip to a cadaver lab as part of his biomedical science senior class. So really great extension of the classroom that does absolutely do exactly what you do, was connecting the real world to what they're learning in the class. So Michelle, could you share some of your strategies with us?
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing is at the beginning of the year, or if you have a program where your kids follow you for 4 years, surveying those kids and making sure that you know what kind of careers they're interested in. Now, no junior or senior, even though they think they do, knows exactly what they're going to do as a career. But I want to know, are my kids interested in a fast-paced place, in emergency medicine? Are they interested in kind of the dental side? And then, like Joe was saying, bringing in speakers and taking them on field trips, which ones to kind of hone in on. For me, it was what kinds of certifications and internships to look for my kids then, because I wanted to make sure they had the chance to do those. So that survey was really important. Another thing, and this is a huge benefit of being in the hospital, when you're in a regular classroom, I brought in guest speakers as much as I could, but it's so hard because they have to take off a day and then you have 4 classes back to back that they might have to speak at. Whereas when you're in the hospital, you're like, can you just stop down between some patients and just talk for a few minutes? So bringing in guest speakers that are in the field as much as possible. I've never had room in the classroom to have them just talk about their career. So I usually give them a lesson to teach, whether it's a lesson on suturing or like prosthetics or doing a urinalysis test or whatever it is, and having the professional teach it. Just like what Joe said, I could tell them, but since I've never actually worked in the healthcare field, they kind of glaze over with their eyes. But when it's a real person, all of a sudden it's amazing. So this year, I also, which I didn't even realize till I got into the hospital, there's a lot of reps out there, like suturing reps, the Da Vinci machine rep, that would love to come to your classroom and sell your kids who are going into future healthcare or the future of healthcare, to sell them on their product. And so I had 4 people come in and teach suturing this year, which is a huge downfall of mine. I have no idea how to do it, but they were experts, and I learned about all the different kinds of needles and what they're used for, and different kinds of thread and different kinds of sutures. And the kids were so much, I think that's the bottom left picture, they're so much more into it than if I were to do it. We started small with internships. We started on during our extreme testing days. So we had school-wide test dates where our sophomores and juniors were all taking a test, and we needed a way to get the seniors out of the school. And so we set up just a 1-day internship. And the school district that I was at the time, I had lived there and my husband had gone to school there and both of my kids had gone to school there. So I knew everybody in the community. So I literally reached out to the fire departments, the chiropractors, the eye doctors, the veterinarians, whoever would, and asked them how many students they could take for a few hours for a job shadow. So after that, and like Joe said, once they realized how amazing the kids were that were in our biomedical program, they were volunteering after that like crazy. Nobody is going to sign on for a semester-long internship for a student if they have no idea what they're doing right off the bat. And so start small with small businesses, small groups of students, small periods of time. I think the next week we moved on to 1 day a week because we had advisory 1 day a week in that school district. And so I sent out just my seniors 1 day a week. And then eventually we got to where we had a whole entire semester program. So it grew pretty fast because the kids are amazing. And if you can get the right kids into those places, and then the business also sees the value because they're growing that next workforce. And honestly, probably half of my kids that I have in internships right now in the hospital, and they've only been there for 4 weeks, have already gotten job offers when they graduate. They want to hire them as patient care techs, as EKG techs, phlebotomy techs, whatever they can. As far as the certification, sorry, I choked up. As far as the certifications, I think the biggest thing with those is figure out which ones would be the most value for your kids in your community, but then securing that funding because you want to make it equitable. The last few school districts I've been in have had very high diversity, and you don't want to have something that only certain kids can actually do. And so making sure it's something that the school can fund in one way or another. The one thing that did separate some of my kids, because some of those certifications you do have to pass a drug test, and so my kids that asked me me, which drugs are they testing for? I said, don't bother. We're not paying for you anyways. So that is the only thing that's really made it. So my kids couldn't do it. And then transportation. A few of our districts do provide transportation to and from the internships, but some of them do not. So that's something you'll want to look at as well.
Fantastic. Thanks, Michelle. Love that community approach, right? Thinking about what resources you have close, introducing them to the power and the amazing things that students can do and the way they can contribute really does open the doors for more opportunity. And that goes straight to that equity of opportunity question as well. So some great tips there. Julie, can you wrap us up here on this topic?
Sure. I'd love to talk a bit about what some of the things that we do. And I'll just say that Michelle and Joe and I, we've worked together before, and we have a lot of things in common with internships and field trips and things like that. I was gonna and so absolutely those should be done, but I also just want to bring up, bringing in that community in different ways as well. So making sure that students are involved with your program and as a representative of your program doing community service. A great way to do this is, get your students involved in HOSA, which is a student organization that the Biomedical Sciences is attached to. But also, our school requires every student to have a major project either every semester or for a full year. And so they present either their proposal or maybe a finished project, depending on the year of their class year, in December, and then again in, say, April or May. So a fall and a spring um, presentation. And those presentations are actually judged by people from the community and people that are on our partnership or advisory committee. And so the ability to keep bringing community members in and have them involved in your partnership meetings, as well as involved with mentoring students, that's a good way to keep your courses going, keep your programs going, because the community will fight for them. And by having them aligned with core content, you start seeing a real difference in test scores. So when our students aren't just you've got already the smartest students. That isn't what's happening. Students come in because they think that it's interesting, but absolutely, some of them need help in with their math scores. Some of them need help with their English scores. And so we are helping and hitting all of those in a more real world way. And it makes such a difference. And it makes a huge difference in those. I mean, you'll definitely see Project Lead the Way students, leading the way on those across any districts that have these programs implemented. I will say that. Um, our projects, I'll just speak to those for just a second because I have a few minutes. We in biomed, I'm able to scaffold that so that when they're 10th graders, they're actually coming up with a new innovation that solves a health problem. They actually have to make a product, and then they present that in a Shark Tank style proposal in the fall, and then in the spring we actually have them uh, with booths like a trade show or a innovation fair. So they have it, they're selling it, they're marketing it. So we bring a lot of entrepreneurial skills into that. And then my juniors, actually, we have the ability for them to do research, but it has to be ungoogleable. So it has to be novel research. In other words, it can't already be out there. The question has to need a new answer. And so those experimental designs come into play, and that they're actually able to carry that out. Those again are done in a proposal style in the fall, And then in the spring, they've actually got the information, and they're presenting it in a style that is very common in the scientific world with the posters. So you'll see down there in the pictures, in the middle there, you can see some posters being presented around the outside of our presentation room. We then have there's a picture there of the of a booth set up, and actually our superintendent is in that picture checking them out. You can see some different proposals. You can see that they dress for the job that they want. You can even see there's a picture there of Rocky and myself. They visited. So you definitely have the ability to bring your students to the forefront. um, Doing some professional portfolios, mock interviews. Those are strategies that work really well, and help kids gain skills, and they get immediate feedback for that. And lastly, I just want to talk a bit about making sure that the teachers feel that they are part of the scientific community and the biomedical sciences community. Um, Most of the time, a biomedical sciences teacher is going to come from a education background where they were teaching science in a traditional manner. And so l- send them to shadow, pay for them to have a couple of sub days getting into, real world labs. Send them to conferences that aren't just teaching conferences. Make sure that they have the ability to grow and learn in that area as well, so that they feel part of the community. They feel that they are a biomedical professional, and that you know those those skills and that enthusiasm will only grow as you work with the students, and the students will only gain so much more knowledge from that. I'm
Awesome.
having a hard time talking without my hands.
That's okay. We can still see your hands, Julie, and I will say, and I've been fortunate because of geography to be able to be down in Julie's school a couple of different times for those student presentations, and what a great way to really help students understand that what they're doing every single day goes beyond the classroom. It's really, really inspiring. I think a great way to bring the world to your classroom. I love that kind of analogy, Julie, of thinking about getting outside of yes, field trips are wonderful. Those experiences are fantastic as well, but bringing people into the school to really see what your students is doing is a great strategy as well. Well, as we think about another layer of this topic, some of us might be newer to this type of work and newer to really trying to broaden what might be possible. So as we think about guidance for those of us that are newer, we're gonna take a few minutes to learn a little bit from our panelists as well here. So Michelle, would you kick us off and maybe give some tips for some of our newer folks in this realm of the work?
Absolutely. And I kind of alluded to this, I think, the last time I talked too, but there's a lot to be overwhelmed with here. Oh, that's my first group of white coat ceremony. I forgot to put that picture on there. So start small and make it relevant to your community. So this group of students was the first group that I took all the way through the biomedical science curriculum and started the actual internship program with. These kids, let's see, one of them's a dentist now, one of them is a physical therapist, one of them is in getting their PhD in something that's way above my head that I can't understand. One of them's in med school. So they all kind of ended up, and one of them's a chiropractor. One of them's in PA schools. Yeah, I'm like looking at them. They're all, you can see those successes from those kids, but they really helped kind of design that program. Surveyed them at the beginning of the year. What they ended up doing is not what they thought. Tyler, which is like the second boy from the side, he was my first ever farm tech. He thought he wanted to go into pharmacy, and now he's getting his PhD in something above my head. But yeah, so they all ended up in the healthcare realm, but really designed that program with us. Now, at the time when we started those internships, kids did not leave the school. So that was kind of a foreign concept, but we were in a really, really small town and I knew everybody there. So I was able to I knew that they were safe to send my kids to, because that was the first question my admin asked is, are we going to do background checks on all these people? I'm like, they're my kids' parents and my husband's best friend. I think they're okay. So, or it was teachers' husbands and wives and things like that. So knowing your community is really good place to start. Sometimes the smaller the place, the more they're willing to let kids in. Bigger hospitals, it's harder to get in unless you're at a program like what I'm in now. And so knowing what you have to work with is huge. Survey not just the students, but then, ask the students, what do your parents do? And maybe they would be willing to partner with us on some of these IRCs and field trips and guest speakers and internships and things like that. And then making it work within your school day, because kids do have outside of school commitments, whether it's sports or work or whatever else. And so trying to find a time during the school day that you can bring those experiences in for them.
Fantastic. Thank you. Julie, could you share a few ways, some tips for our newer folks here?
Absolutely. So, advisory committees can be so important. I've talked about them a little bit, but just one of the questions I get really commonly when I'm uh, teaching, training teachers is, how do I build this partnership team? And so what Michelle said, parents, yeah, you start off with the parents, absolutely, and nothing is, off the table. The way that I look at it is that. Um, if you're particularly um close with your doctor, your dentist, like ask them if they want to be involved in those areas, or be involved in training and helping students. Something that surprised me greatly when I first came into teaching was how willing professionals are to come in and be a part of your team. And I always thought nobody's going to want to do that. We have Toyota here in our backyard. I have people from Toyota on my advisory. We also, there's times when businesses actually will pay for the time off to be a part of a committee or something like that. So don't be afraid to ask. Another thing is don't be afraid to have people that aren't necessarily directly within your area. You don't have to have all doctors and nurses. I've got realtors, I've got bankers, I've got, like I said, engineers from Toyota. And the reason for that is they're all part of this community. And when a realtor is trying to sell a house in this town, the only school they bring them to is my school. They're going to bring them here and show it off because that's a big seller of what we do. And so, making sure that, that stays in. We joined the Chamber of Commerce. All of our schools are partners with the chamber. And so I am a member of the Governmental Affairs Committee, and I go to meetings, and that is, I don't actually live in the district that I work in. And so, but I know more about uh the businesses in this town than I do in the one that I live in, the next county over. So um those are super important. Have in-person meetings, feed them. Don't ask for money, but ask for time, and that makes a huge difference. And invite and celebrate them. When you celebrate the students, invite them to come in and do that. I've got some pictures there of some students of mine that are addressing the committee, and that there's a picture there of me and my team. We get together, making sure that you build that team atmosphere among yourself, and your partners. Um, Not just expect the students to collaborate if they can't see you collaborating as well. So that's a big deal. The last thing I'll just mention really quickly is, and there was a question about HOSA, is future health occupations. It's all career tech programs have a student organization attached to them federally, and for the greatness of the students getting those chances to put their skills to work, but also if you want to be eligible for federal monies like Perkins funding, you have to have a HOSA chapter that's associated with your program. And so, what I would say there is start small. Make sure that you have at least one advisor affiliated, and whatever your state requires as the minimum to be a sufficient size. I think in Kentucky it's 5, so we have to have 5 students affiliated. I have 151 affiliated students. So we actually have a health sciences program and the biomedical science program, and we share, and I am the advisor. And I think why it's so successful is I don't make it about going to international meetings or going to even state meetings. I make it about our meeting in our school. And we have a meeting during the school day, and we have a speaker at every one of them, and we have activities, and we do community service, and we make sure that the meetings at the school are worth the dues to pay. And so I think that's why it's so successful.
Awesome, Julie. Thanks for sharing that advice. Joe, what advice would you have for our newbies?
Yeah, so I'm just going to piggyback right off what Michelle and Julie talked about. But basically, I've been doing this for a long time, so 16 years in the biomed program, and I still feel like I'm kind of slacking sometimes when I hear all the stuff other teachers are doing. So my advice is just start slowly, just start building it, because you're going to get overwhelmed really quickly when you try to do everything at once. So, I just build one field trip or 2 field trips, and then once I make those connections, whether that's at a university or a hospital, now I know next year we can kind of just keep adjusting it and then maybe add on. So just take it in small little chunks rather than trying to jump in and just do it all at once. Especially like the job shadows or internships. That's a full-time job in itself. Sometimes setting those up. I mean, it's a lot. So just take it slow. The second thing, kind of building on what they said, ask the community for help and resources. There's so many different community members that actually businesses and things like that that want to help. For instance, at hospitals, they have professionals or they have equipment that they would like to donate, but they don't know where to contact or how to get it there. So they're waiting kind of for an invite over there, and we're waiting for them to jump over. So all it takes is usually one conversation. And I mean, this just happened where, we went to a new hospital for just a field trip. I was talking with them and I said, "Hey, do you guys have any expired suture? Because we love to suture in the class." And they said, "Oh, we'll hook you up." And, soon enough, like 2 days later, I got box after boxes after boxes, because they don't want to throw this hospital equipment away, but they can't use it legally. So they would love to donate it to us and stuff. So it just, don't be afraid to hear the word no. If I'm always accident prone, so if I'm in the urgent care myself getting worked on or wherever, I'm asking them, "Hey, do you guys do job shadows here? Can I do a field trip?" And sometimes I hear the word no, and sometimes it leads to great things. I can tell you, if you talk to a healthcare place like a hospital or urgent care, if you just call them up on the phone, you're most likely to hear, "No, we don't do that." But if you can get somebody that behind the scenes that works there, they can kind of get that process going, and it makes it a lot better. And then usually once the first time, well, I know the first time our students go there, they realize what level they're working at, like I talked about, and they love having us there. And then we start getting guest speakers and things like that. And then the last little piece of advice is come up with your own kind of, I call it the brand for your program. So simple things, some swag t-shirts, you can use Chat GPT or AI to make a logo really easy. Just start putting that out there. And that's where we get that middle school pathway, high school kids. And it's really quickly, you'll see kids wearing that stuff, and the program just starts to grow and the word gets out. So that's one of the things that it seems really small, but even like little lanyards for their keys, it's amazing how many kids will wear those, and just gets the word out about the program. Because even I'm in a fairly large high school, and there's some kids that don't even know the biomed program exists. So the more we can kind of get out there and advertise it, just the stronger the program gets and grows. But again, just take it slow and little pieces at a time. So
Great advice, Joe. And start small and use your resources, right? And I think we heard that across the board from Michelle and Julie as well. Well, thank you so much for sharing. Those tidbits and those nuggets of small, simple ways to get started and to think through some next steps for our newer folks. We're going to transition into some questions, and we do have a few minutes to be able to take a few questions. So I'm going to toss out a couple of questions, and Michelle, Julie, Joe, whoever wants to jump in, please feel free. But we're going to start off with one that says, what strategy have you found that's the most effective for helping students see themselves in roles they've maybe never heard of, or careers they've never heard of?
So I like to just talk about the breadth and the how many different careers fall under the biomedical sciences. Um, but putting them into and practically the way the curriculum does a really good job of this in that they play the role a lot, and so you've got to sell that playing that role. So like when the student is being looking at the curriculum through the eyes of a physical therapist and they're talking to a patient, you've got to set that up in the room so that they have an office and they have a patient that's coming in, so you've got somebody playing that role, and they've got to dress appropriately for that. They've got to, do the demonstrations appropriately. They've got to talk to the patient in that way. So putting them kind of in that role. I do have a story about a student that I've got lots of stories about students, but I have a student that uh, just knocked it out of the park with her innovation project, her and her team, to the point that she actually changed her major. She changed colleges completely. She was a senior, and she had finished that at the end of her junior year. Going into her senior year, she changed to an entrepreneurial and biomed degree at a different college, so that she is currently m- in the start. She's got a startup biotech company is what she's doing. So she's currently working with the University of Kentucky, which is not where she graduated from, but working with their kind of bioengineering group there with some vessels and things like that. So I thought that was just really cool because that was not the way she was going at all. It completely changed her outlook.
That's awesome. Um, each of you kind of talked a little bit about some of the partnerships that you've built with your community. So, can you talk about how a school that's new to adding, either a biomedical or a healthcare pathway, how can they start to build partnerships with local industries? I know, I've heard Michelle, you talk a little bit about it, Joe, you as well, Julie, you as well. Would one of you want to just talk about maybe what's the first step that someone could take when they're out there cultivating a partnership?
So one of the things, I mean, I think they'll probably agree with this. One of the easiest ways to start these partnerships is to simply lean on the parents a little bit. It is absolutely shocking that you'll have these students maybe all year or semester, and then at the very end they're like, "Oh, well, my mom is an orthopedic surgeon, and she would like to help." And it's like, "Hey, that would have been useful in September." But so I ask them, do you have any family members that are in healthcare, and what do they do?" And quickly, anyone that catches my attention, be like, okay, this one works at the hospital just down the road from us. I'm going to reach out nicely and just say, hey, this is something that we like to do, and just kind of start the conversation there. And again, not to be afraid of the word no. I mean, not, just make it a nice invite to start a conversation. And sometimes they can help me, or sometimes they'll lead me to a new person or this or that. And it'll just kind of, that conversation will evolve. But instead of just cold calling hospitals or businesses or things like that, just see if you have that person that could get you kind of beyond that front door, just from the people that are sitting in your classroom, is one of the easiest strategies to do early in the game for sure.
I love that. Michelle, you're in an interesting situation being where your classroom is now. How did that come to be? How did that partnership happen?
Well, I just followed a previous principal, so it was pretty easy. but but this program's been around much longer than me. But I did want to add, Julie had mentioned that she's part of the Chamber of Commerce. Joe said when he goes to the urgent care all the times, he's like talking about, trying to get people in. And I think both of those point to, and I think my husband gets annoyed too. He's like, "Do you ever not talk about your job?" No, honey, I don't. I love my job and I'm always on. And that's part of it. Is I think everybody I come in contact with knows what I do and knows the quality of students that I have. The other thing that's really super useful for me this year, so I've never had business cards because I've just never had them made. So I made a digital business card on Blink. It's BLINQ. Forgot to add that to my notes. So sorry for those of you that are posting things. But you can create a free digital business card so that when you do make one of those connections out in the community, whether you're at the Chamber of Commerce meeting or you're there at the urgent care getting your toe fixed or whatever, and they just scan the QR code and they've got all your contact information. And then it also gives them the option to send it back to you. So it's a
Mm.
super quick, and even if I had business cards, I would forget to bring them 90% of the time. So, but just always being on and looking for those opportunities for your kids.
I've got one more. Maybe we'll toss out there. Maybe just try to hear a quick uh, excerpt from each of you on this. But as you're out there talking to post-secondary and employers, what are they telling you they need most from their future students and workers? And how are you responding to that in the classroom?
So I'll start first real quick. The biggest thing that I hear from the industry is that they just want students that are coming out willing to learn and are able to work by themselves and work in small groups. They just want a person that's going to show up and you have a basic skill set, but be able to learn whatever new techniques, new procedures, whatever that they want. They just kind of want somebody that they can rely on to learn, master a skill that they're taught, and to be able to work not only by themselves but in other groups, large or small, and communicate effectively to get that job done. That's what I hear from almost every place that we go to. So
I would agree with Joe. I hear a lot of that. A lot of well, I transferable skills, transportable skills. Used to call them soft skills if you want to go years and years ago. I hear a lot of that across the board. Um, but our students also are needing to have the ability to understand ethics and understand how to question in a way that is responsible because of the influx of media and not sure whether something is true or not, making sure that they are keeping that in check and understanding that they always need to kind of look for that. I think that AI is, a tool that everyone has to be aware of, but our students are going to need those interpersonal skills because AI can do some great things, but it's still not going to, be able to fully diagnose you and put hands on you, right? It might be coming, but not quite yet. So I think that that's by taking the students and putting them in these role play um, situations and holding them accountable to those. I think that's what becomes really important.
Michelle?
Totally agree. I don't want to be a broken record here, but like PLTW calls them the transportable skills. And every one of my kids I've visited at their internships, the ones that they're ready to hire straight out of high school, that's what they're looking for. Is they said, we can't teach personality, we can teach them what to do. Even the careers that require more education, CRNA, doctor, surgeon, whatever it is, those fields are changing. And I saw some questions come along about how is biomedical science is changing. We don't even know. And that's what the kids have to realize is, I can teach you the content that exists today, but you may get out in the field and wherever you're working, it's going to change on a dime. And you have to be adaptable and you have to know how to learn, not coming out with the know it all and I know everything already. And so those transportable skills and just a willingness to learn new things and then the openness and flexibility. My kids that think they know what they're going to do and then they get into internships and their eyes are open. They're like, I didn't even know people did this for a job. So just keeping that open mind for sure.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all for the last hour, but for sharing that last little bit as well, because I think that is something that as educators are really wrestling with. How are we best preparing our students for whatever their next is? We really need to know what universities, what post-secondary, whatever technical or trades they might be going into, and especially the workforce. We have to understand how we can prepare our students for the future that they choose. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to our panelists, and hope everyone has a great rest of your day.